Three Ghosts is the episode where Arrow does Christmas Carol and Oliver gets haunted by three ghosts from his past. It is one of the greatest episodes of Arrow because even though it's pretty early on in his history, we get revisions and we get revisited by his mistakes. And you get to see that even though Oliver has shaped up to be a really great superhero, he doesn't know if he's a great man. And it faces us, the audience, with that same question. And I think that's a powerful question.
The Three Ghosts is the episode where you watch Oliver fully snap off of Felicity after she brings Barry down to the foundry, because you see Barry get shot with a dart after Oliver gets hit with his own trank dart trying to take down Cyrus Gold after he finds out he's been injected with Mirakuru, and Oliver's pissed because Felicity has given up his identity. But then Oliver realized after he's been injected with this rat poison that helps save his life, basically, he's seeing things. He's seeing Shadow. He like, why am I seeing Shadow? She dead. I saw her get shot. He's seeing Tommy. Tommy's dead. What's going on? He sees Slade. But then we find out later in the episode, Slade is alive and well.
Which was interesting because this was the mid-season finale of season 2. I guess under normal TV rules, when they introduced Slade in season 1, I was like, oh, this is going to be season 5. Slade's going to be the bad guy. You know what I mean? Like, they were playing the long hand. So the fact that it's like, no, it's happening now, was a really cool play on expectation. And interesting, too, because it resulted in this season being one of the best seasons, but also making it more challenging for other seasons to live up to it.
Three Ghosts is the second part of my favorite two-parter that Arrow did in the early days, because it was the introduction of Barry Allen. Also, you have to see Barry being a scientist, and Scientist Barry is always the most interesting Barry. But take a flash out of it for a second. You get revisit with Shadow and with Slade, but most heartbreakingly Tommy, and that's pretty rough. Also, you get no more grease paint, and even though I did like the grease paint, I'm glad he actually got a mask.
Three Ghosts is an episode of Arrow that shouldn't work. Most sci-fi, most adventure shows give us the episode where people look at spirits or people from their past that aren't there, and most of the time they're forgettable. For some reason, this episode is very memorable for Arrow, I think because it dives deep into Oliver Queen's psyche and shows us how much he's actually struggling by accomplishing his mission.
I enjoy that they brought Barry in. I like how they incorporated him into the episode of having to save Oliver. But also, it's like, I understand where Oliver's coming from with not wanting his identity to be revealed, but I'm glad Felicity took the risk to reveal that to Barry. And I think it was the beginning of a really cool friendship between Oliver and Barry, and a little bit of a love thing between Felicity and Barry. But overall, I like this decision.
He was mad that Felicity and Barry were getting close. That was really the main reason. But he also tells something for her to Felicity. That's not your choice to make. That's mine. I tell who I want to know my secret identity. But in certain situations, if Felicity's a genius and can't help in this situation, you would have died. So you have to suck that up if you're Oliver Queen, and eventually he kind of did, but it irked his soul that Barry and Felicity were getting closer.
I appreciate in this episode that Barry Allen saved Oliver Queen's life, but I think it's bullcrap that Felicity gives away Oliver Queen's identity. And I blame this episode for being the first episode of the Arrowverse to just be willy-nilly with the secret identity. I think this opened the Pandora's box of just taking off his mask left and right, and everybody in town knows who Oliver Queen is, the Arrow. I blame this episode, and I blame Felicity.
I think her reveal of Oliver's identity to Barry in this episode is a huge mistake. It's a big blunder. Oliver is justified in his anger at her. I mean, Barry at this point is a completely unknown quantity. We've known him for a couple days. He seems like an okay dude. I love Barry and Felicity's chemistry. I actually live for that in a way that I don't live for Felicity, but that's not enough reason to trust somebody with your most guarded secret, which is Oliver's identity. I wouldn't have told Barry, that's all I'm saying.
Is Oliver justified to be mad at Barry? Hey, you know what? You're always kind of justified to be mad at Barry. So the three ghosts, the titular three ghosts of this episode are Shadow, Slade, and Tommy. One of them still alive. Spoilers for 3 seasons ago. And who's the actor's name that plays Tommy?
Colton Haynes. That's Roy. Colin Donnell, I think.
Yeah, Colin Donnell as Tommy. Anytime they can bring him back, without resurrecting him. That's the impressive thing. They've found excuses to bring that actor back a couple times and have stayed true to not bring him back, which is good on them for this show, because other characters just keep popping their heads back in.
Tommy was a great character in season 1, and the fact he died at the finale during the undertaking was sad. Like, yo, we'll never see him again. And to see the return, you're like, oh man, this is gonna happen. What's he gonna do? How is he gonna feel it? And to find out that Tommy's inspiring him. You know, and Shadow's telling him, basically, it's your fault. I'm gone because of you. And Slade being like, I made a promise. But seeing Tommy was one of the best.
Seeing Tommy hurt me. But also it was a little bit of closure for Oliver, because he was feeling unbelievably guilty. Like, the season 2 started with him back on Lian Yu, just trying to atone or just deal with his own emotions in a poor way. But I'm glad that they ended it on that note of him talking to Tommy and him telling him that he can be the hero that the city needs. I enjoyed that, and also that was your little tease of Slade, since he was going to show up later in this episode, in the present time of like, oh man, this is where Oliver's at in his own head. With everything that happened with Slade, and we're gonna dive into that in the back half of season 2.
I like Shadow a lot. I really do, and I miss her on the show as much as I miss Moira. Seeing Slade in the modern day world was very interesting, but the one that breaks your heart is Tommy. There's something about this show. Every time they bring Tommy back, it cracks your heart in half. Listen to what Tommy says to Oliver in this episode. He says something along the lines of, you beat the island, you can beat this medicine, and you're not a bad guy. You're a hero. And I think that this is kind of a turning point for Oliver in the second season, and I love that Tommy is the one that gave it to him.
I love Tommy Merlin. I love him so much. If he were around for more episodes, he might outstrip Diggle as my favorite character on the show, but you gotta give it to Diggle for just sticking around and putting up with all of Oliver's crap. Any excuse to bring Tommy back on the show, I'm 1000% here for. Bring him back as a ghost, bring him back as a force ghost, bring him back as a hallucination. Like, there's at least one of those we haven't done yet. This was the first time he had come back to the show, and I could have cried tears of joy. And the scene that he shares with Oliver is really wonderful.
One thing that Arrow does very well is surprise twists. And the scene with Brother Blood and revealing that Slade is in Starling City knocked my socks off. We knew it was coming, but I didn't think it was gonna come this early. There was some time where I thought we might not get Slade as the villain until season 5. Here he is in season 2, and he's pissed.
Seeing Slade got me kind of giddy, even though we knew he was coming. We knew he was the big bad for season 2, but he had the gray hair and he had the eye patch, so you're like, I don't know, we get to see the evolution of Slade turning into Deathstroke, at least from I think it's the best use also of the flashback in season 2, the way they built up the villain, which was really cool. It made me angry that we had to wait a month to continue that story.
Manu Bennett as Slade Wilson is just a goddamn gift. I love that they age him up by giving him some gray hair this season. It recalls an image closer to the classic Deathstroke, which is really, really fun. I didn't think when he was first introduced that we would ever get him in the present day timeline, and this was so interesting to me, and what unspools out of this is really great too.
I think having Slade show up in the current timeline off the island was a big deal for this show, because again, it showed that they weren't messing around, they weren't wasting time. We were getting to the Deathstroke plotline, which I think is one of Green Arrow's, at least I'm going to say, one of his most iconic enemies. He's got other enemies that are like Merlin that are more closely tied to him, but I think Deathstroke is one of the top tier DC villains, which makes him kind of a top tier Green Arrow villain.
We'd seen the mask on the island. We saw it, first we saw it with Bill Wintergreen. You're like, is that? No, it can't be, because they said Slade Wilson. And then you find out he's alive and well. You find out he is pulling the strings, running the shots. He is the man behind Brother Blood that has helped making Mirakuru spread throughout Starling at the time. Starling City.
So we get an in-universe explanation for how Green Arrow gets his classic domino mask. Barry Allen designs it. I will say I do have some small love for the grease paint. There's something about the grease paint that I like. I know it's stupid, but for some reason it just seems very metal and I like it. It just seems so grunge to me that this guy is so angry at his city that he's like, yes, yes, and like, you know, and then he's like, oh, this guy is the guy I'm gonna kill on the list. That's who I'm going after. The domino mask takes away from that, kind of puts you on a Lone Ranger level, makes you more of a sophisticated superhero, but it's a good moment. I kind of wish that maybe Barry had designed him some trick arrows as well, but you know what? You take what you can get.
I was not necessarily the biggest fan of the grease paint. And you know what? It's telling because Barry gets struck by lightning in this episode and he gets his mask. It's like, hey, everybody, this is a superhero show now. Like, just stay tuned. And now, 4 seasons later, we've got bad guys from alternate dimensions and superpowers, and we fought aliens and all that jazz.
I just want to know where Barry ordered it from, because he made it seem like this was this unique type of mask that he couldn't get. It's like, dude, you could just order a basic mask and just send it off. But he kept telling Oliver, even when he found out, he was like, you can do a lot better than the grease paint. Oliver even tells him, if you can give me something that will improve my peripheral vision and keep it where I can run and see and shoot, whatever, I'll give it a shot. And to watch Felicity when she helped him put it on and say, now you look like a hero. Oh, whatever.
The episode ends with Barry Allen getting struck by lightning in the classic Flash origin. I don't think it's needed for this episode. We go on to have the pilot episode of The Flash, which basically takes all of this footage and just reuses it, which I respect from a budget standpoint. Like, that's an admirable thing to do. I would have rather seen maybe more Shadow, because Shadow's a really great character who kind of gets dropped after this point. I would have rather see pretty much anything else that actually had to do with Arrow instead of the final scene with Barry.
Barry Allen gets struck by lightning. He gets his superpowers in this episode. Now, there's a lot of things that, you know, The Flash was sort of gonna have its pilot in Arrow's second season. They later decided against that. I don't know, it's cool, yet it's weird. I almost think they should have saved this moment for the Flash pilot. I do like the idea that this is confirming that there's a much larger world of superheroes out there, but there is also a little tinge of me that says this scene seems out of place in Arrow.
I like that moment because that moment officially lets you know we were starting a universe. There were various episodes, like maybe 2 episodes prior, even before Barry showed up, there were little Easter eggs being thrown in. Then the inclusion actually of Barry Allen. Then the particle acceleration has its incident. The lightning comes and strikes him, and you see the lightning bolts, and you're like, oh my God, we're really getting the Flash. And then he's gone until the Flash has its own show.
It was a good tease of what was to come. Also, it was my favorite way a show has teased the future of its own, like what it can do now. It opened the door to a lot more possibilities of not just like, here's not Firefly. It's a guy, it's a firefighter that likes to start fires or something from season 1. But no, it was like, no, now we get to play with metahumans, and maybe they're the impossibles out there, whatever they like to say. But it was a cool way of just signaling for us, the viewers, that we could be getting a Flash show if they pick up the pilot, but also at the very least, we could see the Flash popping up on Arrow and metahuman threats, so that was pretty cool.
3 Ghosts can't be ignored. It deserves to be on this list because it shows you the depth of Oliver's guilt, but also the depth of his conviction. And it starts a trope that stays with him for a long time, but it does it better than a lot of subsequent episodes. Number 7 is a respectable location for 3 Ghosts, I think.
Again, it pushes those heartstrings. It really does. It punches you in the guts when Tommy shows up. And it's all about Arl Oliver being so focused on his mission, it can only happen this way, that he doesn't realize that there are many ways to do it. And again, God, just for the Deathstroke reveal, this easily is in the top 10 list. This episode should definitely be higher because it's everything we love about Arrow. Plus, it got rid of the grease paint, so I guess that might be a plus for some people.
I think 3 Ghosts is perfect on the list. It's not fully an appearance of the Flash, it's an introduction to the Flash. And it's like where Brave and the Bold is. That's the first appearance of the Flash and Arrow. You know, so where it is on the list is pretty decent for me.
I feel like number 7's pretty good for Three Ghosts. A lot of these, the best episodes of Arrow, it says a lot about Oliver as a character and how he's growing into the man that he's going to be. And it does it in an interesting, dynamic way. And again, anytime you tie in Christmas Carol, I think it's a sturdy foundation to build off of. However, I think most people probably picked it because Barry gets struck by lightning.
I totally agree that this episode deserves to be on the top 10 list because it's one of my favorite iterations of Barry. He's very positive. He plays off the cast really well, but also Oliver being able to kind of bury the hatchet and the Slade reveal. It's pretty dope. The 7 slot for this episode is perfect for it.